The Lord be with you. And with your spirit. A reading from the 15th chapter of the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus. But the Pharisees and scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So to them Jesus addressed this parable. A man had 2 sons, and the younger son said to his father, "Father, give me the share of your estate that should come to me." So the father divided the property between them. After a few days, the younger son collected all his belongings and set off to a distant country where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. When he had freely spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he found himself in dire need. So he hired himself out to one of the local citizens, who sent him to his farm to tend the swine. And he longed to eat his fill of the pods on which the swine fed, but nobody gave him any. Coming to his senses, he thought, "How many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food to eat, but here am I, dying of hunger. I shall get up and go to my father, and I shall say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me as you would treat one of your hired workers.' So he got up and went back to his father. While he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son.' But his father ordered his servants, 'Quickly, bring the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fattened calf and slaughter it. Then let us celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.' Then the celebration began. Now the older son had been out in the field, and on his way back, as he neared the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked what this might mean. The servant said to him, 'Your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf because he has him back, safe and sound.' He became angry, and when he refused to enter the house, his father came out and pleaded with him. He said to his father in reply, 'Look, all these years I served you, and not once did I disobey your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. But when your son returns, who swallowed up your property with prostitutes, for him you slaughtered the fattened calf.' He said to him, 'My son, you are here with me always. Everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
My props today are you and me. For in this story of the parable, in this selection from the Gospel, we start off wondering, which prop am I? Am I the Pharisee and scribe to whom the parable is addressed? They got it, but yet didn't get it. What they got was that Jesus was eating with sinners and would visit with sinners. What they didn't get was that's why he came. to forgive sinners and to celebrate that they are forgiven. And so he decided to share a parable with them. The parable has been called by 3 different titles. One is the parable of the forgiving father, whom some call the parable of the crazy father. Some call it the parable of the prodigal son, the one who wandered and squandered. And the other is called the parable of the elder brother. At one time or another in our life, we are one of those characters. The elder brother is where I'd like to start. He knew that his father's heart was breaking because of the missing son. Why didn't the elder son go out in search of his brother? If for no other reason, to just give joy to the father. The elder son didn't do that. The wisdom expressed in the parable teaches us that human sin can take the form of wild and rebellious behavior, like the younger son, but it can also take the form of a sullen and angry and judgmental son as well. Civil law is concerned, of course, with the wild and rebellious behavior. But it's clear that the sullenness of the elder son, the anger, the lack of understanding and calling the father essentially unjust in accepting the son back is much more dangerous. And then there's the father, forlorn with his son who was lost. He saw him coming, and the prodigal son came with impure motives. He was just hungry. His belly was empty. And he thought, all I have to do is go to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against you and heaven. And certainly my father will take me back and I can finally take care of my empty stomach. It was an impure motive. But the father didn't care. He just saw the son coming, and he more than ran out to meet him more than halfway, embraced him, put a ring on his finger, said, let's celebrate. That's the Jesus who would sit down with sinners and eat with them. The son, the one who rejected the father, rejected so much. He rejected his whole inheritance, which was all the good that the father stood for. He rejected his brother as well. He was just tired of being under what he called the thumb. And he said, I'll just take my inheritance and make my own way. He just couldn't take being restricted anymore. The father was more concerned with not concerned about how he was offended. He was more concerned about the son who was lost. And so for us during Lent, all we have to do is come forward knowing that something's missing. We can even get by with impure motives, not completely good motives, and yet the Father is going to rush out to us. And that's why we say in confession, bless me, Father, I have sinned. We'd like to do it with perfect, pure motives, but even if we don't, the Father is going to embrace us and celebrate. The bottom line in this parable is Jesus invites us to go to the Father and say, I have sinned. And the beauty of this parable is then the trust that the Father sees in Jesus will see in each of us. And then we can come and celebrate at this eternal banquet, at the Eucharist, to celebrate that kind of forgiveness. But you know, there's something left in this parable. The father tried to calm the anger and the sullenness of the elder son. We don't know what the rest of that story was. What happened to the elder son? Did he ever reconcile with his brother? Did he ever come to understand deeply how the Father's love and forgiveness works? That could be a little bit of our story. It's the never-ending story, and one that we want to make certain that we don't get caught up in. We want to come, even with only impure motives, to the Father who will forgive us and celebrate that the one who was lost has been found. And the Father will come running out to meet us and then ask us to join in this great banquet